Hey, it's Chris. Looking back again, old games, where are they at? Now, this is the fun one, right? Because we're going 2 years back. We're going 2021. Some of these have delivered, some of these haven't. And that's always the tricky standpoint. How do you feel now, 2 years out? You've had some time to digest it. You've had some time to, lose some hair over the money spent. You've also had some time to maybe have it already in your collection and have it played. Or have already gotten rid of it. And that's where this lies. That's why it's important to look back and say, okay, as hard as this is sometimes, as much as it pains the wallet and the heart, let's take a hard look. Because we learn by not repeating history, right? Okay, let's do this. What do we got up first this month? Well, we have Fall of the Mountain King, Burnt Island Games, the sequel to In the Hall of the Mountain King, taking a different spin on area control tableau building as you sort of layer your tableau corner over corner, iconography giving you various actions that are going to be in your benefit, and you're putting your troops out onto the map, not in order to necessarily have them out there the most always, but also to have them just die. And so you get resources, so then you get points and you get victory and you just, get killed by little gnomes. And all in all, I mean, I've got my copy sitting somewhere around here, right here actually, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. I haven't played it enough to be completely transparent to know whether or not I'm going to keep it. I got the Kickstarter edition. It's got the extras. So that was the real backing point because there were some gameplay content exclusives. And it's got a 7.6 on Board Game Geek right now. I think it was relatively on time. Burnt Island does a pretty good job on that. I just don't know if it's as good as people were thinking initially when they were backing it in the first place. And me being one of those people, I just don't know yet. The big criticisms seem to be at this point that it drags on too long and that it's just too much going on. And one of the comments in Board Game Geek was like, it's a dumpster fire by the end, right? Because you're laying all these guys out and all your guys die and you're, like I just mentioned, that's the sort of the objective from that standpoint. And I wonder if more plays are going to change some of that. The rule book is not the easiest to get through. It's not as clear with some of the examples, especially with the gnome aspect of things coming in at the end of each round. And from this thing, it reminds me a little bit of this, right? If it overstays its welcome, it doesn't matter how good it is up until that point, it's going to be harder to get to the table. It's going to be harder for me to advocate from that aspect of things, right? I mean, $400,000, 4,000 backers, really a success overall. You can see backer right here. And at some point, I'm going to have a review out of this one. Now, does it need the plastic miniatures? No, I actually prefer the meeples in games like this. I think they look nicer. They look cleaner on the board. It gives you better color asymmetry. I don't have to worry about a bunch of gray plastic junk sitting there. I really like this tableau system, but the area on the map gets a little muddy, and that's where I think the big criticisms are. So, final judgment, pre-hype, probably an 8. Post-hype, probably an 8. Now hype, probably a 6, because, again, I just haven't been able to get it played, folks. Just haven't been able to get it played. And because it's at that point, right, that's a to be determined. But I'm starting to make a list and check it twice of things that I just want to get rid of. I'm going to finally purge this summer in a month or so. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to sell stuff for cheap. And, I'm not going to be one of those people that says, okay, well, this right now, the Kickstarter edition will cost you $60 on Amazon. I'm going to sell it for $57, right? No, I'm going to be one of those people that says it's $60 on Amazon, right? Okay, or Miniature Market, whatever, if you're anti-Amazon. I don't care. It's not that's not the point of this conversation. I'm going to say 30, 35, right? I just want to get rid of stuff prices. And that's on the list of, will I, won't I? Again, not because I'm necessarily against the game, but is it gonna get forking played? And I don't know if it's good enough from that standpoint now. So take that for what you will. Take that for what you will. Next up, this was one of the few, again, I have about one of these every couple months, it seems like, that I sort of hemmed and hawed on because you know me, my review of Summoner Wars, love me some Exceed, love me BattleCon, love me some Soccer Arms, love me the 1 versus 1s, right? And this gives me the vibes of Summoner Wars, Mage Wars, those aspects, laying down the cards of AracKhan Wars, right? Sort of an under the radar, indie style, card game laying them down in a different way, because instead of laying them down and manipulating them on the board like you do with Summoner Wars, right? You lay them down and then they tableau build, but it's a tableau that you build along with your opponent. And they had a relatively decent amount of exclusives. I just kind of went, you know, price point was, you know, pretty decently expensive for what it was. And I couldn't justify it because it was also one of those that I could see kind of going either way. Is it actually going to show the balance of something like a Summoner Wars, right? That's the good thing of having those games out not on crowdfunding. You don't have to necessarily worry about it. Other people have play tested it. Other people have already reviewed it to know whether or not it's actually as balanced as it should be. And that's the big concern with a game like this, as much as I love the concept. And if you don't remember it, here it is. Again, first time creator too. I mean, that's, you know, gonna be a little bit trepidatious from a backing standpoint nowadays, especially. 1,300 backers though, $100,000, so great concept. And the artwork, again, is fantastic. The essence of the game is this card placement, Magic the Gathering meets Summoner Wars style game, right? I love this because there's interactions that are gonna be going on all over the board. Balance. That's the issue. You deck construct. I think that's actually the reason I didn't back it, because it was the combination of price and deck construction. Because once you go down here and look at the price levels, 4 factions, awesome. You know, 45 bucks. Then if you want more expansions, 61 euros. If you want them all though, it's going to cost you over 100. And I said, you know, now I don't need the sleeves, so maybe you can get a little bit less down here. I don't even remember what else you can get, but I think there were some exclusives locked in this higher pledge, which made me go, man, I really want this. Like this. I think the Singing Iron expansion was kind of locked there, or maybe the Moving Shadow. I don't remember which one it was. But there's a few things down here. Oh, this is the one it was. The Bjartur. I don't know, whatever. That was the one. Extremely powerful foil cards. Again, is that a balance issue? Of course it is. So you don't really need them whatsoever. Comes with a mat though, comes with sleeves, comes with terrain cards, and I just don't like the other stuff tied in, right? I don't want a strategy guide. I don't want to pay for sleeves. So the add-ons, though, weren't going to save you any money if you bought them separately, at least with the lower pledge levels. So this is one that, you know, I've had my eye on. I've had my nose to the ground about, and I just, you know, look at this Kickstarter, mostly art exclusive cards, a few actual content. So this is one I could see myself easily picking up on the secondary market when it actually gets delivered. Now that's the key next point. Got the drink sitting here next to me today because I still haven't gotten rid of the cough from being sick. So earlier this month, they gave an update, because if you go back over here a second, you look at this February 2020 freaking, not 2023, 2022. So you're a year and a half. You're a year and a half over. This is 2 years of a card game not being done. And I guess, like I always say, better to have a good card game late than a crappy one that's going to be out there forever crappy. Production state. They're overdoing production with long pack. Okay. Elements of games are printed except for 2, which you have to send the files for, one of the expansions and, you know, the strategic guide. Okay. That's fine. Whatever. Sample review. Okay. Pre-production, improvements and some of this stuff. I think it's cool. You've got an unboxing. I don't care about holographic stuff. Logistics though. I'd say you're probably going to have this the end of Q3, beginning of Q4. I could see this being like a October sort of situation. I think it's going to be something potentially solid. It's just, is it going to stand up? Is it going to be as balanced as it need to be? And like I mentioned, with the construction aspect of things, especially with this many cards, you know, I can't do that very well. I'd love to try it. We'll wait and see too. Pre-campaign, I mean, this was one where I went down to the minute in terms of deciding whether or not to back it, right? Pre-campaign, didn't know about it. Post-campaign, 7. Still, you know, probably about a 7. Solid 7 right now. Now, next up, we're going to go a slightly different direction. A game that I have not been able to fully play hardly at all. A game that I want to play desperately. But it's one of those games where player count forking matters. I need at least 3 players. And this is Adventure Tactics. This is what is declared as the closest thing to Final Fantasy Tactics, the board game. And if you are a old school gamer like I am, right? Maybe not new school. I haven't played a ton of stuff recently. I have some hand issues, so I don't play a lot of video games. That's why I'm doing board games, right? And so I really was a huge fan of Final Fantasy Tactics. PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, like absolutely love that game. One of the best games ever. Period. And with that, though, there's always been a clamoring for a tabletop version of that. And Adventure Tactics is just that. So Adventure Tactics, Lemon Games came out with their expansion for that. And this was Adventures in Alchemy. Now, the big issue and why I actually traded right after this campaign to get a copy of the base game was to play with my kids, right? My kids weren't old enough at the time. And now the issue is my 7-year-old isn't quite good enough yet to play that sort of game. I think my 9-year-old could handle it. But then again, right, like I said, there's the dilemma, right? 3 people. My wife's not going to play this with us because there's no way that the 7-year-old and the 2-year-old are going to keep themselves occupied. The reason I didn't get this one either, though, I said $35 for the expansion, $125 because they revamped some of the stuff. There was some warping the boards in the first edition. They upgraded some of the errata, that sort of thing, right? But you look at these hero packs and the enemy packs, and they're all, I believe, as well as the player mats, I mean, they're all non-gameplay. I think these are all miniatures. I'm very happy Team Standee, if you know me. And so that was really the reason to get it right now, right? Standees, this is all not exclusive. The exclusivity stuff is none of the gameplay. It's the mats, it's the alt art, and it's these packs, which are just minis. And so I said, I'd love this game, and I'm going to get it at retail. And it basically is this dungeon crawl, light style, family friendly, but adept enough that's going to suit your gaming group to a lighter extent with just as the Final Fantasy Tactics, if you're not familiar, you basically get whatever class you want. And as you upgrade, you get like diverging paths of classes as you specialize, sort of like an RPG element. And it's just amazing. And there's just tons and tons and tons and tons of options. And it's not all just bash. It's not all just take out the enemies. It's a lot of different driven campaign scenarios that you have to go off of. Lots of different enemies and just cool stuff. And so they give you it all right here, right? Like level up, change your character, level up, 20 different classes right there. Your powers, how synergistic do you want to be in the group? So yeah, it's just cool. And this is one that I'm going to end up getting. And I really want to play this with my kid. I'm just not sure he's there yet, or they're there yet. This is one I've had on my radar for a long time. So the only issue was it was supposed to be delivered a year ago in June 2022. Now, June 2023 here comes along and they say they've got stuff on the boats. So going to land on shore in mid-June. 1 to 2 weeks to clear customs, 1 to 2 weeks to do that. So you'll have it maybe in, end of July. So I'm guessing sometime retail later this year. And again, it'll be on my wish list of things to pick up at that standpoint. So pre-campaign, probably a 6 or 7. Post-campaign, I'm probably about the same, which is incredible that 2 of these games have sort of stayed up there for me that are significant potential pickups for me, even post-campaign crowdfunding. Because again, you can still support publishers at retail, folks. Don't forget that. We're going to hop over to GameFound with the next one. This was 11, the Football Manager board game, and this was one that Portal actually sent me to test out and prototype, which was really cool. It's one of my biggest ones from one of the biggest companies at the time for my channel. And I liked it, but I had some criticisms. Obviously, there were some issues, there was some balance, there were just a few of those things. That went over really well, I think. And so we'll see. I don't know what the final product is looking like so far. I think the opinions are a little bit mixed. It's got a 7.5 on Board Game Geek. Some people seem to really like it. Some people really are not as big a fan. This is a game where you're playing as a football manager. Like, this is not tactical on the field, team by team, attacking, balancing, that sort of thing. It's basically the overarching building your stadium, hiring your, whatever, building every aspect of your stadium, managing the finances of the team. Yeah, you're doing some game by game management, but that's a minor or lesser issue than the overarching stuff. And so if you're looking for an actual football, no. If you want this, yeah. It did run a little bit long though. And it's got a 1 to 2 hour playtime listed, which I think was one of my criticisms. I could see this being a little bit longer in general. And it came with a bunch of expansions and almost $500,000 on crowdfunding for a football game. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And a non-miniature game for Portal here, that was really good for them as well. Was a little bit expensive for what it is, but with all of the expansions, again here, like look at all the expansions you're getting here. Stretch goals, International Cup, international players, stadium expansion, solo expansion, unexpected events expansion. I mean, that's a lot of content, even though it is $140. I guess just the question is, how many of those expansions are you going to play with, right? How many of those expansions are you actually going to use? How many of those expansions are going to sit and shrink for 1.5 years on your shelf? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And so when you go back over to this pledge here, let's take a look for a second. This was supposed to be delivered in August of 2022, and I think it just delivered in like the last month or so, maybe 2 months. And so, yeah, it was about 6-7 months over maybe. Not too bad. Again, Board Game Geek, 7.5, seems to be okay. Best though, and that's where I played it at the most, was solo. And I could see solo people really liking this as a challenge. It reminds me of a football version of Robinson Crusoe. I know nothing about Robinson Crusoe game. I'm just, hyperbolizing there. But That's the aspect of things that I think should be noted. Will you like it though? I mean, go watch the reviews. I don't have a copy, so I can't really go into any more detail because the copy I had was very early. So a lot of changes and issues have been addressed since my video itself in the first place. So there you go. Pre-campaign, I thought was a really cool idea. Post-campaign, I was kind of like, oh, this is, you know, again, like not what I initially expected. And it was more Euro economic style than I necessarily like diving into at always. Although maybe now, since I haven't played it in 2 years, my tastes have definitely evolved since then as well. Pre-campaign 7, post-campaign 4. Again, love to play it and try it out. I'm not going to try and pick it up at all though. Skyrim. We're talking about Skyrim here. Modiphus. Over on GameFound, Skyrim the adventure game. The first of the Elder Scrolls bigger project games. Miniature driven. Money raising. Cash. Trying to emulate doing everything in Skyrim. Encapsulating the scope of an Elder Scrolls game. Good thing. Also, potentially, if you've heard of board games with sprawling campaign issues, potentially a little bit of a Achilles heel. So I've got the Modiphus page pulled up here a second. The core game right now is selling on their website for $195 forking dollars. Expansion, $112, 56. That's insane. That's insane, folks. I mean, it raised, you know, over $1.25 million on crowdfunding, even though it only had 7,000 backers. So that's a little bit more on average than you would think. At the same time, you go down to the rewards, right? This deluxe tier. Now they, you know, had to change some things mid-campaign because people were not happy with these pledge levels initially. 220 pounds. 220 pounds total. That got you the base game, expansion, neoprene mat, coins, miniatures, exclusive expansion. I mean, you can't even hardly buy the base game right now for that price. That's an insane forking markup. Insane. Now, which is funny that you have it marked at 195, right? 195 pounds, because you go over here on Board Game Oracle, everyone's selling it between 112 and 140. Like, I have to imagine there have to be better places in the UK to actually get this, right? Than Modiphus. I mean, 114 pounds, I mean, it's still way less than $196. Like, holy cow, I can't imagine that. I'm sounding like Scooby-Doo, like trying to think of excuses, trying to think of ways that could be justified. But no. What the deuce is going on there? Anyway, I mean, I've heard criticisms and loving of this game, and I don't know what to make of it because people come on either side of things. They think it encapsulates the beauty of Skyrim, but also, again, here you go. Now, they say the rule book, below par. Potentially wanting to split it up and not play it together. On the other side of things, you're going to have your Skyrim folks. And I think that was really where the first Skyrim game came out. And they said, yeah, a little FOMO there. Definitely playing off the IP. Now, how do you feel about things? So, a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall positive right now? I don't know. I have no interest in it. Skyrim for me, Elder Scrolls for me is not the IP that it is for other people. It's just not. You know, I say that as someone who's played 3, 4, and, well, 5. So, I know why people like it. I know why people love it. Is this one going to stand the test of time? This one is more of the Amerithrash side of things, where Chip Theory is more of, well, I don't really know what Chip Theory is too many bonesy, if you will. I don't really know what else to say about that. Does it really fall under the Amerithrash or the Euro or the somewhere quagmire in between? I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. Anyway, I had no interest in this before it launched. I had no interest in it after it launched. From a personal, I can play this and really want to enjoy it on the table standpoint as a dungeon crawl adventure quest style game. So 4 and 4 maybe. But yeah, that's about it. Speaking of other things that I got to play as a prototype, Skybound Tabletop, their Valor and Villainy series. This one was Lludwik's Labyrinth. Lludwik, not that Lludwik, not Lludwik von Mario, but just Lludwik as the bad guy from the original Valor and Villainy. And this gave you a way to play the game as different bad guys going head-to-head cooperatively against said bad guys in the first place. And it was more of a dungeon crawl with a looping system where if you went too far over on one side of the map, it connected to the other, but you had to have tunnels that would connect, and the tunnels of the tiles that you pulled would only have certain directions, and so it would splay things out that way. And you had this unique little adventure upgrade system on your player character, and it was kind of something different in terms of those mechanics. It was nice. It was hard, and it did well. And then you go back over here, 5,000 backers, over $500,000, miniature-driven dungeon crawl-esque style game. Just kind of cool. This little dice-based grid system here, yeah, I mean, it worked. Interesting little upgrade system of colors that you had going along each player character track. It was kind of cool. Easily a solo player one, easily something that was going to be slightly different. Definitely better than the original one from that aspect of things. Again, here you can see 5 villains versus 1. They were cross-compatible though. So it was, you know, I think relatively well thought of at the time in September 2022. And I believe it's actually in the process of being delivered right now, if I'm looking and remembering correctly. So shipping status, yep, it is shipping underway currently as we speak, and should be done in the next couple weeks. And so that was actually at the beginning of May. So people should be mostly having their copies at this point right now. So let's check it out, what it's got on Board Game Geek as well. It has an 8.6, which is, again, really good, but it only has 98 ratings. So take that for what you will. It's an RPG-style co-op, 1 to 6 players, going up against asymmetric bad guys. And that's okay. Is it going to stand the test of time? How is it going to compare to the others that are this style of things? No idea. You can make an argument that the mechanics are slightly unique enough to make a niche in your collection to keep it around as opposed to other things or where the similarities are too overlapping. But, you know, I don't know. This is just one of those ones that's always sort of flown under the radar, just like the first one around as well. And one of those reasons I can't explain it. But again, for one that's flying under the radar, $500,000 in crowdfunding ain't too shabby. So pre-campaign, you know, I actually was probably like a 7.5. Post-campaign, I said, yeah, this is good, but I just don't think I'm going to get to the table over other stuff. So probably like 5.5. Again, not that it's a bad game, but couldn't see myself having enough of a carved up niche out because, again, solo, easy to play. Multiplayer, it's going to be a lot harder overhead-wise. So take that for what you will. Last up, Paradox Initiative. This was a remake of the original game Paradox by Elf Creek Games going to crowdfunding. And it's just sort of like it says, drafting, set collection, resource management with a bejeweled-like grid that you're going to be using colorful discs to manipulate that are going to represent a universe of worlds. And past, present, and future are going to be all manipulatable. And how well you can do it, or what you want to do in terms of a drafting per turn, is going to be how you're going to outdo your opponents. So the original version, 7.0 on Board Game Geek. The new version, well, we don't quite have a whole lot of information yet on it from that aspect. So the real question was, originally when this launched, what's going to make it different? What's going to make it better? Why are you doing a game like this? How can you make it better? And I like the fact that post-campaign, they said, you know what? Here's all the list of summary things that's going to be different. And so that's okay. That's okay. So we go back over here. We get a status update in June, right prior to me filming this, because again, this was supposed to be delivered in May 2022. So we are already 13 months overdue. The big problem with this one is that, as I just looked up on the previous page here, you can see May 2022. This doesn't seem like a terribly complex game that should be taking 13 months overdue, or we're already 2 years out from. That is, you know, really a card-based, chip-based system, right? Why, where, what the deuce, right? So we're 13 months later, and they say literally just before me filming this, yeah, about that. Yeah, we're going to have you. If you've ever seen Office Space, you know what I'm talking about. The problem here is, though, apparently Peter and Paul are getting together again, if you know what I'm referring to. If you don't, well, biblical reference there. You can look up the metaphor. Atlantis Rising Monstrosities is screwing things up, apparently, just down the line of things, which always scary on the crowdfunding aspect, as we've seen with other big companies, about too many balls being juggled at the same time. Now, they say here their rule book is ready for proofing. Their rule book is ready for proofing. Holy WTF. You're finally getting a rule book done 2 years later? Like, that's a little scary. It's a little scary, folks. Now, not like red flag scary, because to be frank, it should be red flag scary. Elf Creek doesn't have failures so far that I know of, but, you know, how did you not have a complete, you know, 3/4 rulebook fleshed out post-campaign? Now, if you're not familiar with Atlantis Rising and the Monstrosities expansion, the issue is that they're 80 grand short of the shipping costs, which is weird because all of the information elsewhere says that shipping costs have gone down considerably since the middle of the pandemic. And I guess they maybe processed their stuff too early, or they booked this too early. I don't know. The issue here is it actually reminds me more of what ran into the Black Rose Wars Sartar box expansion. They overdid stuff, or they overpromised stuff, or both. The pledge price was $29 and it ended up costing more. And they thought the MSRP is $35 and now it's gonna be $45. They should have charged $39. So they should have charged more. So now you're gonna have to pay more on the back end. And that's kind of where things are at. So basically they say if you're in some of those areas where it may cost more to send it to, they're gonna reach out to you and potentially, yeah. They also didn't charge VAT. Okay. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of all of this, but I don't like any of it. Because if they're that short, 80 grand short, as they're saying here, 80 grand, that's going to have some trickle-down effect. And that's going to be a problem if you have a campaign over here with Paradox Initiative, right, that only raised $72,000 to begin with. So even if you spend all the funds, Peter robbing Paul, that's not even going to cover it. And then that's absolutely nothing to cover this. It's not going to red flag me yet overall on this one. But if you're one of these 1,300 backers right now, I'd be a little bit concerned that you're ever going to get a game here. I would. I hate saying that. Wasn't planning on even having this conversation during this video, but you know what? Here we are. So, well, that's the way to end, just like the last one. Oh, man. Just like the last one when we ended with chai tea for 2, right? Now we end with this. So take that for what you will. That's all I got. Again, interesting set of things. Interesting look back on the big names. Where are they now? And to be frank, the more I do these, the less prolific, the less, whoa, these big names turn out to be a couple years later, right? Isn't that surprising? And again, that's why I do a weekly roundup to say, okay, let's pump the brakes here. You know, I got some cool stuff, but at the same time, pumping the brakes to make sure you're getting something that's, one, it's going to be safe for you to get, and then 2, it's going to be actually good for you because, you know, wearing those rose-colored glasses during crowdfunding all the forking time. So that's all I got. Have a great day. Stay classy. Hopefully you're doing something fun. Got too much stuff to play. Reorganizing in here a little bit. I wasn't kidding about that purge, though. Wasn't kidding about that purge. It's going to happen. I need space. I need more floor space in here. Good thing you can't see the floor. Peace out. See you around.